Do you like action games? Are you a fan of JRPGs? Do you enjoy killer soundtracks? If you answered yes to those questions, then you would love the E-Series. Yep, that's right, the E-Series. Now you might be wondering, how on earth are the letters Y and S pronounced East? Well, don't worry about it. I'll get to that soon, TM. For now though, Ys is an action JRPG series developed by Nihon Falcom that has been around since 1987, and throughout its 35 plus year history has amassed a small yet very passionate fan base. And I am one of those fans. In this video, I'm going to go over the gameplay, the music, the general premise and setting of the series, and where to start if you're a newcomer. During its many years, the E-Series has been no stranger to changing things up to stay relevant and exciting. But despite the changes, the gameplay in Ys will always be fast, simple, and addicting. I'm going to go over the most prominent gameplay systems seen in the E-Series, and I'm going to kick things off where it all began, the bump system. The bump system is featured in Ys 1 and 2, and it gets its name from how you fight enemies. There is no swing your sword button, so you bump into enemies as your way of attacking. You can increase your odds of success by bumping into the sides or backs of your foes, although it's not always quite reliable. The joy from this system comes from just how fast and smooth the movement is. While this system certainly isn't the most appealing to modern gaming audiences, I'm sure this style of play was probably revolutionary for 1987. Onwards to the Napishtim system. The Napishtim system is featured in Ys 6, the Ark of Napishtim, Oath in Felghana, and Ys Origin. The system gets its name because, well, Ys 6, the Ark of Napishtim is what started this gameplay style. The way this system blends action, platforming, and Metroidvania-esque elements is just simply beautiful. Even today, these games are just a joy to play. The movement and animations are just so fast and fluid that you'll be slaying down hordes of monsters in no time. It's no wonder these games are still considered fan favorites in the series. Moving on to the more modern stuff, the party system. The party system is featured in Ys 7, Memories of Celceta, Ys 8, and Ys 9. The player in these games will have access to a party of characters, each with different move and skill sets, providing a lot of variety to the gameplay. Every party member will have one of 3 different attack types, which will be strong or weak against certain enemies. The gameplay in this system heavily promotes constantly switching party members, further enhancing the variety of the gameplay. While this modern system certainly is a lot different than what came before, it still holds that old Ys magic. It's still fast and smooth as butter, pleasing old and new fans alike. Falcom struck gold with this gameplay system, especially with Ys 8 and 9. But the E-Series is no stranger to change, and I do have another system to cover. Follow me to the cross-action gameplay system. The cross-action gameplay system featured in Ys 10 and probably a few future installments takes out the party we had previously, and instead features only 2 playable characters. Now this might seem like a downgrade at glance value, but oh man, this was a genius idea by Falcom. With less characters, precious development time can go to way more meaningful skills and abilities for the player to have at their disposal. There's no attack types in this system, so the reason for switching then becomes that each character has their own SP bar, instead of a shared bar. SP is needed for skills, so generally you want to switch when a character is running low. But that's not all. If you use different skills in a consecutive order, you will start a chain. The higher the number of that chain, the lower the SP cost of skills. The variety then comes into play because you are incentivized to switch between the 2 characters and use all the skills you currently have equipped to build that chain up. And there's still more. You can combine the 2 characters for a duo attack mode that also acts as a way for blocking attacks. The duo mode even has their own unique skills that are more powerful than the solo ones. Now that was just a brief and very generalized overview of the gameplay in the series. I could go a lot deeper with this, but I don't want to talk your ears off. and I don't want this video to be hours long. And so, off to the music we go. The music in the E series, like many JRPGs, goes for the more eccentric and melodic approach, meaning the tracks in the games are going to be very memorable. The series has a wide variety of genres in its tracks. However, what the series is known for is its hype tracks with the guitars and violins going absolutely wild. The series does still have good emotional themes and town songs though. Don't worry, it's not just shredding guitars. Throughout this video, I've been using music from Ys. So if you like what you have been hearing so far, you would love the music in the E series. Although this hasn't made for much of a section so far, has it? But don't worry, for you see, there is something very special and unique about the music in the E series, and that is the music in Ys actively enhances the gameplay. In most JRPGs, the field themes and battle themes are separate, but that is not the case in Ys. Once you are out of town and on the field, it's go time. The sword is out with monsters at the ready. And so, this means that the field themes in Ys also act as the battle themes, which results in music that absolutely hypes you up and puts you in the perfect mood for slaying enemies. There's no interruptions with the music in an area where you are killing monsters. Ys is a series where the statement grinding equals fun is true, and I believe the music plays a big part in that. Premise and setting time. Do you know the name Adol Christin? Adol Christin, 1,000 years ago, or possibly even several hundred years more. He was born in a small backwater town on the western shore of the continent of Eurasia, in the northeast of the Europe region. From the time he was 16 until his death at 63, he was an intrepid adventurer who visited many foreign lands, principally around Europe. Born of a poor family of farmers, it was evident to all that he was a young man brimming with curiosity, interested in any topic. In particular, he wanted to learn about the world outside of his small village. One day he happened to meet a traveler who came to his village. This made him decide to travel and experience adventure himself. In that time, society was limited to just foot and boat travel, so the breadth of Adol's exploration is truly impressive. It is said that he traveled to the center of Africa to the south, as far as the river Tigris and Orietta in the east, and in his final years set his sights on the North Pole, though it appears he failed to have gotten there. From what we can tell, we get the impression that it would be appropriate to describe him as having a considerably inquisitive, adventurous spirit, which yearned for strange foreign lands. As he visited places, he recorded the events in journals, which he left for posterity. A representative example of his journals might be the 5 Dragons of Altago, the Foliage Ocean in Salsetta, the Sand City of Kefin. These are the sorts of stories he recorded. Unlike the man himself, who swept through the Western world like a storm, his travelogues, which exceed 100 volumes, currently lie preserved in the basement storeroom of his family home. Through reading these tomes, we hope to come to understand exactly what sort of adventurer he was. The tale that we record henceforth, the first translation and novelization that we have done to memorialize his journeys, is taken from the opening section of The Ancient Vanished Kingdom. This adventure begins in the Kingdom of Hysteria, which now lies on the ocean floor. The details for how he came to be in Hysteria shall be weaved into our story. In this era, light and darkness were still in total chaos. We would like you to read this volume experiencing what he did and feeling as if you were the man himself. Now, what I just read was a segment found in the original instruction manual of Ys 1 from 1987. The setting of Ys is many years ago in a fictional version of Earth, while the stories and characters of each game are based on the exaggerated journal entries Adol Christin wrote. Don't expect historical accuracy with its setting. There is certainly a lot of what I would like to call anime magic in the series. But hey man, that's what makes things fun. One thing I would really like to point out though, is that the continuity and lore of the series is surprisingly deep. Now, is it on the level of Falcom's other flagship, the Trails series? Or Final Fantasy XIV? Nah, not at all. But for a series that has gameplay as good as this, it is truly noteworthy, and is a nice little bonus for the fans of the series. Now this brings the question, who is Adol Christin? The man, the myth, the legend, adventurer, and heartbreaker. The main character of the series, Adol Christin, he takes on the role of a silent protagonist and is present in every game except Ys Origin. At first he may seem a little generic and boring, but as time goes on, this is a character that grows on ya. His ADHD for adventure just might be contagious. So I've been caught up to the series since 2015, and I find it fascinating that the first thing I always want to know is, where on the timeline is the new game going to take place? How old is Adol in this one? Since I already know the gameplay and music are going to be excellent, most of my anticipation for the new games is for stuff related to Adol. There's just something so tantalizing about this guy. The goddamn ADHD for adventure, man. It's a hell of a drug. It's probably dangerous to keep going down this tangent. The Ys series overall is pretty newcomer friendly. Most games in the series are fairly standalone. That said, I do got some suggestions, and I think the easiest way to kick this off is where not to start. I got 3 games right here that I recommend not starting with. First up is Ys 2. The reason not to start with this one is that it's the only game in the series that is a direct sequel. This game takes place mere moments after Ys 1. So don't play it until you have played Ys 1. Next up is the infamous black sheep of the series, Ys 5. After revisiting it a while back, I've gained some appreciation for it, and I think I was too harsh on it in the past. That said, I don't recommend playing it, mostly because it requires an emulator with a translation patch, so it's not very accessible. Finally, I don't recommend Memories of Celceta, mostly because of its rough beginning hours of the game. It does pick up quite a bit after a while and is still a decent game, but I don't recommend it because I figure it would not be a good first impression for the series. Alright, with all that out of the way, let's get down to business. Here's the games I recommend starting with. The first recommendation I got is what I'm calling the safe bet choice. In terms of praise and popularity, this game is essentially the Final Fantasy VII of the Ys series. Ys 8 Lacrimosa of Dana. Falcom were on fire when they made this game. The gameplay, the music, the exploration. Oh man, this is a modern classic that should be played. Next up is a recommendation for the retro gamers out there. If you get a massive kick out of old games and you have a library of 80s and 90s games in your basement, you would love Ys 1 and 2. Now there are so many different versions of Ys 1 and 2, so which ones do you go for? That's easy, go for either the Chronicles version or the TurboGrafx CD version. I certainly got my preference though. Coming up is a recommendation for those who like to have an old school experience but need just a little bit of quality of life in their games. Ys the Oath in Felghana is perfect for that. This is arguably the hardest game in the series, so if you really enjoy a challenge, this one is right up your alley. Although, I hear with the new remaster, they lowered the difficulty, so you might have to crank the difficulty up a bit if you play that version. This one is for all the oddballs out there. If you are someone who has hot takes on the regular, these games are the ones for you. Now, don't you worry, for you see, I'm an oddball myself, because these 2 games are my personal favorites in the series. I'm talking about Ys 6 and Ys 7. These games have a special jankiness and charm that isn't found anywhere else in the series. While these games are my favorites, they most certainly aren't objectively the best games in the series. Now there is one game here that I would absolutely love to recommend, especially because the newest game in a series is often the best hook to get someone. But since Ys 10 is getting a new version of the game titled Ys 10 Proud Nordics, which is basically a Persona 5 Royal sort of deal, I would say wait for that Proud Nordics version first, if Ys 10 tickled your fancy. Earlier I said the Ys series is pretty newcomer friendly. These are just my suggestions. If a game in the series looks interesting to you that I didn't suggest, just go for it. You really can't go wrong with any game in this series. The Ys series is criminally underrated and unknown in my opinion. It is truly one of, if not the best, action JRPG series out there. It has fun and fast combat that satisfies like no other. It has music that gets you jamming on the regular. And it has a surprisingly deep lore and continuity that pulls you into its world. Now that you know a little bit about Ys, don't miss out on this series. Dive into the adventures of Adol Christin. Anyways, as per usual, if you have made it this far, thanks for watching. I'll see you around, have a good one, peace.